Okay, we are live, but we shall let it breathe just for a moment here while we bring on our Facebook community. And then we'll get this party started. Welcome in, everybody. It is the Mile High Huddle podcast, and I'm your host, Chad Jensen. With me is my fellow football priest. You know him, you love him, Zack Kelberman. Zack, this is the last weekend Broncos fans will have to. It's July, so suffer is a relative term. But the last weekend that Broncos fans will have to suffer without something happening on the field to talk about, to watch, to break down, look forward to.
Yeah, I was going to say this is the last Sunday, even though the Broncos will have Sundays off during training camp. It's the last Sunday without football activities going on or football season in full swing. And that's what today is. From this point forward until, mid-February, it's NFL time, baby. And let's ride. It's Broncos time.
It feels good, dude. I don't know. This has felt like to me, I don't know why it might be, and I'm curious to find out if anyone in the audience feels the same way too, but for some reason, and I'm not certain of what that reason is, this has felt to me like the longest off season I've ever covered. Have you felt that?
I felt that way about the 6-week break. I was actually saying that to someone the other day, that this usually it goes by pretty fast, but this one has dragged on fairly long. And I think it's the same answer to your question, Chad. It's because we're all so excited to see a formidable Broncos team led by a formidable quarterback and coaching staff. So, yeah, that's why it's felt longer. It's like Christmas morning, waiting for it. And soon enough, we'll be waking up and unwrapping those presents.
I mean, you could think back to 2020 when at this time, well, maybe by this time we had some answers, but by the time the Broncos hit the 6-week break, heck, we weren't even sure if there was going to be a season because of the pandemic. Like nothing was set in stone. And in fact, until they got things rolling and the season actually began, could we believe what our eyes were telling us? Even that off season pales in comparison to just how much of a grind this one has been. But what has helped us get through that grind is you guys. So shout out to each and every one of you for joining us tonight. We got Dylan throwing down early. Make sure you like and subscribe. Appreciate the reminder on that, my friend. Quan, Dale, what's going on, big dog? Let's see here. We've got Jay. We got Jeff. The Duchess is in the hizzy always. I don't know if it's a Mile High Huddle podcast if the Duchess is not in the chat. What's going on, Michaela? So let's dive into some content here. Zack, over the weekend, I wrote up a piece that, in my opinion, kind of fleshes out what's the biggest question surrounding the Denver Broncos entering training camp. And it's not Russell Wilson, although, it's associated, it's adjacent to Russell Wilson. It's not even the coaching staff, which is a question. It's not the question in my mind, though, Zack. It is the offensive line. And we've talked about how this, collection of talent is, at least in my opinion, the best that Russell Wilson's played behind since the Seattle Seahawks kind of Super Bowl years, which was, believe it or not, almost a decade ago. But the reason it becomes a question is even though the talent's there, all but one spot on the offensive line is solved, right? Everything is up in the air, left guard, center. Maybe Cushenberry, it's his job to lose type thing, but right guard, right tackle. Bowles is the only position that is locked in stone. And when you have a bona fide franchise quarterback coming to town and a guy that's been to 9 Pro Bowls in 10 years, like that's just something that needs to get solved ASAP so that, number one, who's going to be blocking for him. Number two, he can start building chemistry with these guys.
Yeah, we talked about this on the radio show last week, the biggest question mark, and you mentioned offensive line, and I broke it down even further because it's not just one question, it's collectively 4 questions. Who's playing right tackle? Who's playing right guard, center, left guard? We just know left tackle, and that's Garrett Bowles, but until then, all these positions are up in the air, and it's a game of musical chairs, and only one person sat down so far, and that's Mr. Garrett Bowles.
That's a good way to put it. Greg, what's going on, my friend? You have become near and dear to our hearts in a relatively short period of time. So appreciate that super chat, buddy.
Greg.
Very generous of you. Does help us keep the lights on, especially with the amount of time and dedication and hours and creative juice we put into our podcast, man. It really helps out. So thank you, Greg.
Yeah, thank you for sure. And we got Howie freaking Day popping in the freaking building tonight. Appreciate you, Howie, as always. Oh my God, the season can't start soon enough. Sup, fellas, and hashtag Broncos country. Let's ride. As always, appreciate you, Howie. And the sentiment is definitely shared by both of us. And we got Michaela Bomb, baby, 49.99. Thank you so much, Michaela. Always seeing the magenta pop up. Magenta Michaela. I think that's the association we're going for here. But Michaela says, are we ready for some football? Let's ride. Who is a new Bronco you most looking forward to seeing?
Mm.
Well, Russell Wilson is number one. And Randy Gregory, I think, is the second best option if he plays, which I think he will. But I'm really excited for DJ Jones, honestly. Like what he can do in the middle of the interior, working next to Draymond Jones, stopping the run for the Broncos was a huge problem last year in the Vic Fangio scheme. They were gashed up the middle. He can also get after the passer. No one's talking about him, Chad. Him and K'Wan Williams in the secondary. Those two additions went under the radar. So I want to see what DJ brings to the table.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Randy Gregory, DJ Jones. I mean, Russell goes without saying, and Michaela, thank you. Love you. Appreciate you so much. For me, I'm going to throw out there Nick Benito, and not just because it's the low-hanging fruit and he was Denver's first draft pick of this particular class, but because, he's an intriguing young guy. He's been compared at times, some of his traits. This isn't like a one-for-one comparison. He's been compared with some of his twitch and bendiness to Von Miller. And with how excited, Zach, I mean, you and I, when we were at the draft and that pick came in, we're like, really? Nick Benito. Okay. But then you watch the behind the Broncos or whatever they called that, behind the scenes. They were stoked, dude. It was like they just landed on the moon. Like they were stoked to land Nick Benito. So, we've here at Mile High Huddle, we've all dived back into the tape to try and figure out why they love this kid so much. And it's become more and more apparent. But even still, I can't wait to see him on the grass, see how it shakes out because, Gregory's hurt. Chubb, you can't, until he proves it, you can't really count on him being available for 17 games. So all of a sudden, Zach, those guys behind the top two become all the more scrutinized, all the more important. You want to spend some time figuring out what you really got there because the only guy that's relatively proven where you feel confident what you have is Malik Reed, and that's nothing to really write home about.
Yeah, Jonathan Cooper is also injured as well, or he was dealing with an injury in OTAs. So, yeah, that position group is kind of up in the air behind the locked-in starters. My reaction to the Benito pick was a little more graphic, I think, than yours, Chad. It's not for public consumption, but as the Broncos, essentially their first-round pick, their first pick after the Russell Wilson trade, he better make an impact. With whatever snaps he's given as a pure pass rusher, he better make an impact. So that's one guy for sure that's both intriguing and also a wild card.
It's the Boise man jumping in. It's great to see you, my friend. This is a Super Chat superstar that's been with us for a long, long time. And even though it's been a minute since I've seen you in the chat, dude, it's like an old buddy pulling up a seat to the bar. So welcome. Appreciate you, Boise man. Thank you for that Super Chat, big dog. Almost football time, he says. Finally catching a live. Got to show some love. Zach, get me on the list for fantasy this year. If you need help running the league, I'm your guy, hashtag Broncos country. Zach, that might not be a bad idea to conscript somebody to help out because our plate just got a lot more full with this new radio show, which we kicked off last week.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I ran the league last year, and it was a lot of fun, but it's also a lot of work. So, Boise, if you're interested in running the league, we're going to definitely have one at MHH. But if you want to be commish, hit us up at milehuddle@gmail.com, and I'll link back with you.
Travis Weber, what's going on, big dog? Hey, by the way, I got a notification from the provider that the hat that's on your way for the Apple Podcast June giveaway, there was some kind of a delay on the availability. You're going to be like another week or so out from getting it. Just FYI, big dog. It's great to see you. Appreciate you, my friend. He says, good evening, Chad, Zach, Scott, and Broncos country. Ready for the season? Let's ride. Prayers to the Texans rookie receiver. Zach, tell people what's happening there.
Yeah, John Metchie has leukemia. I think it's some form of acute leukemia, and he's going to be out for the 2022 season. The football doesn't matter. It's about his health. The best wishes to John Metchie and his family. I hope they get through this issue. And F cancer, Chad. F cancer.
Yeah, it's a bummer. What I was encouraged reading about it though was that he's like perfectly confident that he's going to beat it, that it's beatable. They caught it at a stage where it's like, this, it's going to be a speed bump. I doubt I'll play football this year because I got to worry about chemo and all the stuff that goes into that. God bless him. So, yeah, strength, power as he gets through that. God bless him.
Yeah, for sure. Best wishes. Hope you get well soon, man.
Let's see. We've got also throwing down Jeff with a super chat. Very
Thank
generous,
you,
my
Jeff.
friend. Really appreciate that. And Jeff, it's not just the super chat. Yeah, big love for that. But you're in the chat just about every night, dude. So your consistency, your dedication, your passion, we do appreciate that, big dog. And we'll keep an eye out for any topics that you throw in the chat. Howie again in the freaking house saying, what rookie do you think will shine first in camp and who will struggle the most coming from college to the pros, Zach?
Ooh, that's a great question. That's like a Ron Dub question. Makes you think. I'm gonna go rookie to shine. Honestly, I'm gonna go with a bit of a wild card here. I'm gonna say Damari Mathis because there's a path to immediate playing time for Mathis in that secondary. He looked pretty good in OTAs. The Broncos really were high on him, and they got him as a steal in the 4th round. Chad, he's probably a 3rd round prospect to most teams. So yeah, I'm gonna say he makes an impact in the secondary. Struggling player coming from college to the pros. It's so hard to transition from tight end. So I feel like Greg Dulcich, already being behind Alberto and a couple other veterans are also competing for snaps. I think he's going to have a tough transition in the first half of the season. But by the second half, I think he can get some playing time and maybe unseat Alberto.
It might not be very top level to quote our friend Jake Marsing, but I'm going to go ahead and select Montrell Washington, the 5th round rookie. Why? Because look, man, you're going to see a slog probably initially from Nick Benito as he figures out how to kind of crack the lineup. Rookie tight ends really struggle to flash in training camp because they're mostly getting screamed at to hone their blocking technique. Maybe it's one of the corners. Maybe it's Uwazurike, the defensive lineman. But I'm picking Washington because KJ's still going to be kind of easing back. KJ Hamler, the wide receiver that's recovering from a knee injury. And I think Washington's going to be that speed demon guy that you might get to see and hear some oohs and ahs and some wows in training camp as you show up starting on Wednesday to see it all unfold.
That's a really great shout. Yeah, I'm pretty high on Washington. I know people are writing him off because he was a 5th round pick and he's a special teams guy, but if the Broncos can rectify what they didn't do with Isaiah McKenzie with Montrell Washington, I'd be so happy to see that.
Well, plus, man, like he's on an initial basis with Russell Wilson. You know, M-Dub, I think he called him at one of the press conferences.
Yeah.
So when a 5th round relative, I mean, this isn't just a 5th round rookie like, you know, played at Georgia or now this dude, like you couldn't even find any tape on this cat outside of one game. And so it's not like he brought all that much, you know, cachet to the table as a rookie, but Russell Wilson noticed him really, really fast. So I think that's going to be that's going to come out in the wash when you get to training camp. Michael, it's good to see you, bro. Appreciate you being in the chat with us tonight, my friend. Phil as well. Great to see you. Yes, dude, training camp with some huge stars, by the way, from Phil.
Thank you, Phil.
Love you, buddy. He says training camp soon. Let's ride and go Broncos. That's right, dude. Here we sit on a Sunday night. Tomorrow, nope, sorry, no training camp. The next day, sorry, no training camp. But the day after that, training camp, dude. So it's going to be here before you know it. And then God bless
Greg,
them,
wow.
the football gods. We get we're off to the races. Greg number 2, Magenta number 2 tonight, dude. He's trying to prove that he's a bona fide MHH super chat superstar. Gregory, you're working your way there, dude. Thank you. Very, very generous. Appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you, Greg. And you know, you talk about training camp starting on Wednesday, but rookies and vets are reporting on Tuesday, so we'll have some sort of content coming out of Dove Valley, Chad. You know, radio silence is almost over, and I can't wait for that period to end.
Oh, dude, yes.
Bad.
GLP, what up, bro? He says, "Good afternoon. Shopping for a ticket to the Niners game. Go Broncos. Let's ride indeed, dude. Yeah, we're going to be there. It's going to be dope. GLP, if we get to hang out with you and meet you and shake your hand, look you in the eye, week 3, that's going to be so cool, man. That would be something we'll very much look forward to. So hope you're able to make it, big dog."
Yeah, Gary, if you can, like we said last year, if you can make it out there, just so we can thank you in person for what you've done for the podcast, for the brand, how supportive you've been. I hope you can make it out and we get that experience.
Albert Knoppers, he of the podcast guesting fame. He joined, of course, Kim Becker on Beckoning the Broncos last week, and that was a fun listen. So appreciate you doing that, Albert. he says a lot of writers don't think the Broncos are going to be good because everything is new and not predictable. But being unpredictable makes us dangerous. Yeah, that's a big reason why. It's also, you got to remember, 5 years of kind of waves of hype. There was hype 2016, even though Peyton had retired, because you still had the Super Bowl 50 defense. 2017, not so much. 2018, hype kind of returned in the form of, hey, we threw some money at a quarterback by the name of Case Keenum. Oops, welp. And then 2019, Mile High Joe. Let's not forget, Zach, the legend, Mile High Joe, and
Can we
Drew
forget
Lock.
it?
But you get these little waves of hype, right? And the Broncos just never could come through on their end for that. And so I think in large part, it's a big, the national perspective. They're just like, we'll believe it when we see it. But dude, when your quarterback is 33, 34, going to be, and he's a 9-time Pro Bowler and 10 years in the league, and he's only missed the playoffs as a starter for a decade twice, you got to give the Denver Broncos. I know it's a tough division, Zach, but even the most skeptical analyst out there, you got to give the Broncos some props.
Yeah, I mean, they're not the Browns in outsiders' eyes or the Texans, but they've been a laughingstock. I mean, realistically, since Peyton Manning. And what have the Broncos been known for, Chad, in the last 5 seasons? It would be that quarterback carousel that played during every single Broncos game, showing the uncertainty and instability under center, and they haven't been relevant. And when you're not relevant, no one cares about you. People write you off. People think you're jokes. My response is, Albert, who cares what these writers think? Who cares who predicts the Broncos to do what? We know, and we covered the Broncos. We know the Broncos better, and we know they're going to be better than anything we've seen since Peyton Manning. We know that Russ and Hackett look like the real deal, and the hype surrounding this team is legitimate, not phony.
Can I just real quick grab this from Trap and Dirty, Case Keesum? That was indeed the worst omen, right? It was just like a bad harbinger when the GM goes to introduce the big new high dollar quarterback free agent signing and he mispronounces the name. Now, John Elway is known for being kind of tongue tied at times, so like you forgive him for it. That's just kind of who he is. Really kind of stumbles over. I want to thank, first thing I want to do is thank John Fox, little things like that. Like he's just not he's probably a good salesman, but in terms of public speaking, he can kind of fumble things, but Zach, that was just the worst omen. When he did that, I winced. I definitely winced.
Yeah, one too many rum and cokes, I think, for John before that presser, but it wasn't a good sign. We should have known by then that it wasn't going to work out with Case Keenum, but it's in the past now. It's all that matters.
Good for you, bud. Good for you, bud. Hey, seriously, John Elway's a legend. Love John Elway. Respect the man that brought you 3 world championships. But also, hey, time to turn the page. Right, Jason Boland, jumping in. Appreciate that super chat.
Thank you.
Longtime listener, been with us for many, many moons, and he's on every single podcast. When I jump in to look at the chat and look at the comments, Jason's always in there yakking it up with the host. So appreciate you, buddy. He says, 1 week from right now, I'll be arriving in Denver with my boys for training camp. Cannot wait. Keep up the great work. Appreciate that, my friend. He says, go Broncos. That's cool, man. Good for you, buddy. Hope you have a great time.
Yeah, it's awesome. Training camp's going to be live this year, with Nathaniel Hackett's personality and music coming back to the training center, Chad, unlike in the Vic Fangio years. It's going to be like Woodstock every day out there for Broncos practice.
Yeah, people are like, hey, let's get excited and go to training camp. And they're there and they're like, why is this energy like we're at a funeral or something? Like, what's happening right now? Yeah, it's good new energy that's coming into Dove Valley. So, yeah, it's going to be fun. You might even, Jason, get the privilege of seeing a Nathaniel Hackett take a handoff or something from Russell. Hey, you might even see him playing some off-ball linebackers, chasing a Javonte Williams for craps and gigs. You never know with this cat. You never know.
You might see him breakdance like he did in the past. That was his, previous non-football forte. So anything can happen at Broncos HQ.
We have a top rope super chat from one of the top rope members of our community. She's known as the Queen. Probably needs no introduction from us, but we shall because, hey, the channel keeps growing. 16,000 subscribers. This is the Queen. This is Christy throwing down. If you were to peer through the clouds and try and cast your gaze on the MHH Mount Rushmore of Super Chat superstars, Christy's face would be one of the first etched up in the stone. So the queen, we love you.
Thank you so much, Christy. Chad, you mentioned it's not a pod without Michaela. Well, it's really not a pod without Christy. She goes, all the way back. She's been a supporter from day one, ride or die. Love you, Christy. Thank you so much. She says, hope you all are well and enjoying your evening. It's getting close, friends. Let's go. Closer by the day, Christy. We are within days away, hours, if you boil it down that way, to Broncos training camp, and I can't wait.
And then when you get both Christy and Michaela in the same chat throwing down, it's like, okay, hey, normalism. We're returning to normal.
Yeah.
We're getting back to
Seriously
what it means to be at Mile High Huddle and have fun talking about the Broncos. We're getting out of this desert. So, Zach, let's get back to some content for a second here. And, guys, we will keep grabbing your questions and comments. Chase Wellner, we'll grab your comment about Christopher Allen. All right, but first, I told you what my biggest question is, Zach, surrounding the Broncos, or one of the big questions anyway. What do you have? What's something that's kind of eating at you that you're looking to see some resolution this summer?
You hit the nail on the head with the offensive line. I can be specific and non-specific. I'll start specifically. The secondary kind of scares me. I'm not really at safety so much, but cornerback. And only if what happens, because you need so many corners nowadays. What happens, though, if Ronald Darby goes down? Is Ojemudia going to step up to a starting role? I mean, you're relying on kind of bottom of the roster players who are either inexperienced or unproven. So ideally, I'd like to see that next cornerback step up. That's why I have such high expectations for Damari Mathis. But non-specifically, just the newness. Albert mentioned that in his comment, the newness of everything. We all are excited about Hackett and Russell Wilson, everybody else, and for good reason. We think it'll lead to positive results. But on paper, it's still a new head coach, new quarterback, new OC, new DC, new special teams coordinator, new owner. There are so many new moving parts going on with the Broncos right now. So that's why when people are saying championship, that might take a year before everything molds and melds together. The first year might be just working everything out, working out the kinks, getting on the same page, and firing on all cylinders whenever that may happen.
I think that's more than fair. If you want to try and find the threads, I've talked a lot about how I'm getting 2012 vibes when Peyton Manning came to Denver. Well, one of the big differences between that team and this one with Russell Wilson coming is you had coaching carryover from the year prior, because John Fox was hired in 2011. It was one of the first moves John Elway made as the new football czar in Denver. And you got that Tebow season. It was 8-8, but they did win the division the year prior. Mike McCoy deserved some props for that 2011 season because he went from Kyle Orton to manufacturing the NFL's number one rushing offense on the fly. You win the division, you upset the defending AFC champion Pittsburgh Steelers in the wild card. So you had some coaching juice, you had some coaching carryover. As you mentioned there, Zach, you don't have that this time. I mean, it's everything, dude. Even George Payton, I guess you could maybe compare it and say it's kind of similar in that, hey, you had John Fox carryover, and now on this one, you've got GM carryover. I don't know, but it is a question mark, no doubt.
Yeah, and we all think Hackett and Wilson will be good and lead the Broncos to success, but until that happens, we don't know for certain. That's still an unanswered question, and that's one of the biggest question marks I have going into the season.
Golly, it really feels good tonight. Everybody's just so excited, passionate, and of course, generous. Yes, thank you, the Duchess. Top rope, number 2 tonight. Number 2, love it. Thank you so much. Seriously. She says, do you see us trading for a premier lineman during the season? And I would assume, Michaela, you're talking about offensive lineman, right? Zach, what do you think? Could you see the Broncos making a move there? And what would be precipitating such a move?
I don't know, though, because you have backups at every spot. We don't know we can guess the starters, but they also have backups that they're high on. Like if Dalton Reisner goes out, you have Netani Muti. If Cushenberry comes out, you have Graham Glasgow. I mean, if Billy Turner goes out, you have Compton and Calvin Anderson. I don't see that happening barring injury, Michaela. I think Butch Barry and Nathaniel Hackett, Justin Alton are pretty happy with the players they have on the roster.
We are very lucky. We got 5 individual super chats tonight in the magenta color, and 2 of them come from Michaela. 2 of them come from one of our newest superstars working his way up the chain, of course, in Gregory. So love that. Thank you guys. Seriously, especially the desert we've been walking the last 6 weeks. It means a lot to you football priests. So thank you. And you know what? My take on that topic, Michaela, is I think the Broncos are going to be okay on the offensive line. My question mark is just like who's going to be where and when does that get solidified? I think Dalton Reisner is going to answer the bell. He's not the type of guy to back down when, he faces adversity or there's an obstacle to be overcome. And he's got a couple of things working against him this time around where it's a new coaching staff, it's a new O-line coach, and he's being told up front, and he's heard the rumors that, purportedly anyway, the Broncos tried to trade Dalton Reisner during the draft. He's heard all that. He's not the type to go quietly into that good night. He's going to step up, and I do foresee him winning the left guard job. Lloyd Cushenberry, it sounds like it's his to lose, but don't sleep on the potential for Graham Glasgow. Right guard, I'll be shocked if it's not Quinn Miners. And then, Zach, right tackle, you've got three options. I think the first thing is Billy Turner, because the coaches, not only the connection, right? He goes back with Outen and Hackett to Green Bay, but he's also got some experience protecting an elite quarterback by the name of Aaron Rodgers. So that gives coaches some comfort. But don't sleep, Zach, on Tom Compton. Netani Muti is a backup. There's so many good young players in Denver right now. It's just a matter of, hey, let them fight it out, try and get to that resolution. The sooner the better. I don't think they're going to need to do that, barring some kind of catastrophic rash of injuries, Michaela.
The other thing, Michaela, is if a team has a premier offensive lineman, they're not want to trade them so easily. Those are really hard positions and players to find and lock down. And the Broncos just have to draft well and sign well. And we hope that they signed a competent bunch of right tackles, at least the two they brought in. And we hope that they drafted well players like Netani Muti, Dalton Reisner. We'll see how it shakes out.
Chase, I promised you we'd grab this. Let's grab it now. He wants to know, how do we like Christopher Allen, the undrafted rookie rush linebacker from Alabama, his chances to push Malik Reed off the roster? Zach, knowing that, he still hasn't really been able to participate in jack squat because of his injury. Hopefully that changes starting Wednesday, but what's your answer?
I like Allen a lot. I think the Broncos got a steal in him as a UDFA, but he would have to look like the second coming of Von Miller to unseat a veteran in Malik Reed, who led the Broncos in sacks. What was it, 2 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
A year ago? I mean, so they brought him back, Reed, also for a reason. They tendered him. He's part of the rotation. He's healthy, and they don't have many healthy edge rushers right now. So Allen could be in line for a practice squad spot if he can get healthy and get on the field, but to push Malik Reed off the roster, an established veteran, when you've lost your offseason because of the injury Chad mentioned, that's an uphill battle to climb.
I think it's a pretty safe bet to assume the floor for Allen is the practice squad just because of how much money they guaranteed him this year.
Right.
The only thing I could see fiddling with that equation is if he really just ends up being much farther behind schedule on his injury than they perhaps anticipated. But I don't know. I don't really feel like he's going to be that much of a threat early on. He might be a guy where, he doesn't make the 53. They stash him on the squad. An injury happens, one or two guys above him on the depth chart on the active roster, and you're at week 10, week 11, you need to play him. You call him up on one of those short-term, what do they call it now? I even forget the term, where you can promote them. Is it promote? It's not promote. I'm losing the word. But anyway, from the practice squad to the active roster for game day only, then they can bust them right back down to the practice squad without submitting them to waivers. They can do that twice. I wouldn't be surprised to see Christopher Allen make a debut in a scenario like that, but I'm definitely not expecting big things from him just because he hasn't been healthy. Now, if we were talking about a purely healthy guy going into this conversation, first of all, he wouldn't have been undrafted. Right. He would have actually been drafted somewhere between round 4 and 5 probably. But he did get hurt early on last season, and that set him back.
Yeah, that's the thing with him. When he was on the field at Alabama, he was a menace off the edge, but so rarely was he on the field because he dealt with such major debilitating injuries. Allen also might be a stash for 2023, considering the outside linebacker unit could look a lot different. You have Bradley Chubb on the 5th-year option. What's going to go on with Randy Gregory? He's going to stay healthy, So there's a chance, I think, in the future for Allen, but in the short term, I don't see it.
Yes, I see some comments loving how active the chat is. We're loving it too, but let me tell you something. As a couple of guys who've been down the road a few times with this great community, This is nothing compared to what it's going to be like when cleats are actually hitting the grass. They're going to be probably close to 10 times the number of people in these live chats starting Wednesday night. And it's just going to be a whirlwind. Howie says points per game this year. How many, Zach, with all these new faces? What do you anticipate?
I just pulled up the points per game leaders from last season, and the Cowboys led the league with 30.4 points per game. Second was Tampa Bay at 29.9, then Buffalo at 29.8. So it's going to take a lot to average 30 points a game. That's a really hard feat to hit when you have the instability or newness, I should say, unfamiliarity on that Broncos offense. Maybe they'll, get to that point later in the season, but I would say healthily, it's not a word, but about 25 points a game if all things are clicking. That's a lot of receiving weapons Russell Wilson has to get down with. They have to manage the running attack versus the passing attack. Hackett has to show that he's the real deal as a play caller and a head coach. If all things come together, I'm going to keep it objective, 25 points per game.
Scott, what's the magic number that separates the threats? Is it 24? I'm pretty sure it's 24 points per game. PPG is what, if you can get to 24 points per game, it takes you from being like a, 500 threat to being pretty consistently in the playoff conversation. And I think this is a team that will probably average around 24 points. That's what I'm expecting. And, if it ends up being more great, I can promise you it's not going to be, if it's less, very much less. Like the Broncos got close to that with guys like Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater and even Trevor Siemian back in the day. So I think 24 is a pretty fair projection. The Duchess says, Gregory, I need the syntax. Zach, what is it? What's she saying?
I think she's saying Greg Dulcich, Rookie of the Year. It can't be Randy Gregory. So,
okay.
I'm assuming. Let us know, Michaela.
Is that what you're saying? But if that's the case, sometimes what happens too is we'll see a comment or a chat that we flash on the screen and we realize it's actually there's some kind of provenance connection to something, a conversation taking place in the chat. And when we're talking live off the top of our heads like this, we're not always clued into that. It's not that easy for us to catch up. So if that's the case, we apologize, Michaela. Just clarify for us. We're happy to answer. Travis says the running back position. We all feel that Williams, Javonte, should be running back one. Yeah, dude. And I thought it was really interesting. Doug Farrar, a former Yahoo guy, now he works for USA Today's Touchdown Wire. He put Javonte Williams at number 3 on his running back rankings and panned basically all the teams that passed on him last year in the draft because he, of course, Pookie was the 3rd running back drafted in the 2021 class. And how many teams are ruining that decision? I could promise you a fair number of them. But yeah, dude, it's going to be hard, even though Melvin Gordon is no joke. Like Melvin Gordon is a very good NFL running back, and he's still on the tail end of his prime. It's going to be very hard to keep Pookie on the sideline this year. I'm just telling you.
It's nice to hear that Doug Farrar has ears, eyes, and a brain and can see that Javonte Williams should be the RB1, and he's that good. Number 3 in the NFL. It might be a little optimistic, but top 10 running back, I think, for sure. And I don't understand any Broncos fan who still thinks Melvin Gordon should be the starter. I mean, it's a new day. It's a new era. It's Pookie's time.
There is an article up at milehighhuddle.com talking about analyzing what Farrar said and some of his analysis on Pookie. Go read that, you guys, when you get some time. Phil says, how does the Broncos offensive playmakers stack up against the rest of the league? That's a pretty nice segue to something I wanted to bring up tonight anyway, Zach. One of our new writing interns at Mile High Huddle is this cat named Brennan Gross. And my dude has some chops, and he published an article over the weekend, Broncos offensive position groups ranked versus the AFC West rivals. And I'm just going to take you through this. It's very, very thorough, and it's hard to pick nits in his takeaways and his analysis here, but he's got at quarterback, he's got Kansas City. It's hard to put anyone but Patrick Mahomes. When it's Patrick Mahomes in your division, Zach, it's hard to put anybody but Kansas City at number 1 at quarterback. Denver number 2, Chargers 3, Raiders 4. There's a lot of people, though, Zach, that would flip-flop 3 and 2. A lot of, especially from the national perspective. That's quarterback. Do you agree? Kansas City, probably in fairness, in trying to be as objective as possible, should rank number 1 in that particular position group in the division?
A lot of people would flip-flop 3 and 1. So many Chargers bandwagon homers out there and fans. I think Mahomes being a top 3 quarterback at worst in the NFL, Andy Reid being a top 5 head coach at worst. Plus, they lost Tyreek Hill, but they did add some good receiving talent to kind of counteract that. So until proven otherwise, they're the kings of the West. Until they get knocked off, yeah, number 1.
So then we get to running back. He's got Denver ranked number 1 with the Chargers, Austin Eckler and company at 2, Vegas at 3, and the Chiefs at 4. And I want to read this to you real quick, what he said about the Chiefs. Quote, this is Brennan Gross. The Chiefs may have the deepest group of average players at running back. Former first-rounder Clyde Edwards-Helaire leads the room, who has not yet justified his draft pedigree. The Chiefs also signed Ronald Jones in free agency and re-signed Jerick McKinnon. So he's got the Chiefs worst at running back, Denver number 1. I would agree wholeheartedly, at least, with the number 1 ranking. I don't think any of the other 3 opponents can match Denver's running back prowess right now.
Yeah, as a fantasy owner of Clyde Edwards-Helaire the last couple of years, let me just say, F him. I mean, he's been a major bust. Yeah, Javonte and Pookie, or Javonte and Melvin Gordon got to be number 1. I do like Jerick McKinnon, though. I always have in the NFL. He's always been a playmaker to me. Never really gotten the shine. I do like that as a number 2 guy behind CEH.
Let's look at wide receiver as well. He's got the Raiders at number 1, and he'll explain why. Denver 2, Chargers at 3, Chiefs at 4. But let's read why he's got the Raiders at 1. Devontae Adams, period. Then he says you could probably end the debate there, but they also have one of the best slot receivers in the league in Hunter Renfrow. Keelan Cole rounds out the group as a decent third option. It's a fair argument, but Zach, I know Adams and Carr go all the way back to college. I'm not buying that this cat's going to be as good and thrive as well as he has the last few years, in particular in Green Bay, in Vegas without Aaron Rodgers. Like, I'm not saying Adams sucks. Don't get me wrong. He's still probably going to be an elite wide receiver, but I don't think that they're better than the Broncos right now. That collection, like Renfro's legit. Don't get me wrong. He's one of the better slot receivers in the league. But when you look at it as a top 3, I don't think Adams is good enough in a new environment to justify, say, Keelan Cole being better than if your third guy in Denver is Jerry Jeudy.
Yeah, I disagree. I think as a whole, the Broncos have more receiving talent, but they don't have the notoriety or the cachet as Devontae Adams. I honestly think that Hunter Renfrow can make more of a game-to-game impact. When you need the big play, he's amazing in the slot than Devontae. I agree with you. Leaving the Green Bay nest, leaving LaFleur and Aaron Rodgers, I think he's in for kind of a rude awakening with Josh McDaniels and Derek Carr.
Yeah, that's the other component is it's not just, hey, he's returning with Derek Carr. Yeah, let's go. Well, what the heck is Josh McDaniels going to do? He's never really been impressive. First of all, he's never been impressive outside of the, being under the wing of Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. You could maybe argue that the last 2 years without Tom, that first year things started okay with Cam Newton. And then last year, they got some pretty good results with Mac Jones, but nothing to write home about. That's the factor. But here's the names that Zach was referencing that have arrived in Kansas City to ostensibly replace, or at least help in part replace, the production of Tyreek Hill, Juju Smith-Schuster, and Marcus Valdes-Scantling, former Packer, and then Sky Moore. And then, hey, is this Mecole Hardman's chance to kind of grow into being that guy? Tight end, Zach, hard to debate this one. Kansas City at number 1, Vegas 2. You got 2 All-Pros back-to-back in each one of those groups.
Yeah.
Denver 3, that's fair. LA 4. Let's jump real quick, though, down to offensive line. Chiefs at number 1, according to Brennan Gross, and Denver at number 2. What say you?
Oh, I think Denver should be number 3. Quite honestly, the Chargers lost Brian Bulaga at right tackle, but they picked up Zion Johnson for guard. They kept Herbert upright pretty often last year. So collectively, if the Broncos make the right choices with the remaining 4 starting spots by the end of the season, they could be up there. But right now, I'm going number 3.
Again, very, very good piece. It's a fun read. Very interesting stuff. So go check that out from Brennan Gross at milehighhuddle.com. Mike throwing down a super chat. Thank you, Mike. He says, hello, gents. For the first time in years, I'm excited to watch some Broncos football. Hope our relevancy is put on the field this year. Amen, big dog. Amen. I don't think you have to, of course you're going to hope, but I think you should feel pretty confident, Zach, in your hope.
Yeah, I was going to say, you don't have to hope because they already have, what, 5 primetime games? Every preseason game is nationally televised. They're getting the national spotlight again because of Russell Wilson. Yeah, you're going to see the Broncos back on the NFL map. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again, and it applies to the Broncos. The opposite of love is not hate, it's apathy. And people were completely apathetic to the Broncos since Peyton Manning walked away. That is about to change.
By the way, the aggregate, I should have tied this in a bow from Brennan's piece. Aggregate offensive rankings, he's got Denver at number 1 with an average ranking of 2 on the dot, 2.0. Kansas City at number 2 with an average ranking of 2.2. Vegas at 3, average ranking of 2.8. And then the Chargers at 4, average ranking 3.0. So for what that's worth, we'll see if it comes out on the wash that way. But I'm inclined to agree that this is a team, the NFL is still very much sleeping on. Everybody wants to crown the Chargers. The conversation really from any plausible, credible NFL analyst, when you talk about the AFC West, yeah, it's fun to talk Raiders, fun to talk Chargers and what could be with Justin Herbert, but it really comes down to Patrick Mahomes and Russell Wilson. Let's be honest.
Yeah, that's going to be the arms race, I think, in the West. And now with Russell Wilson under center, there's a chance the Broncos can finally win that competition. That's what's so exciting about this season.
Lawrence says, good evening. He's just finishing up some errands, just trying to listen. Very cool, dude. Appreciate that, my friend. And the stars, the throwdown, the check-in. Appreciate that, big dog. Be careful driving. Eyes on the road, okay? Eyes on the road. You know what's up. Okay, we're sitting here, Zach, at 41 minutes. Any last burning topics, guys, get them in the chat, and we will get to them. But anything else, Zach, that we have? I mean, we've talked about the O-line as a question mark for this team entering camp. We've talked about, for you especially, some of the cornerback depth is worrisome, or at least you want some clarity there. What about the coaching staff? We haven't really dwelt too much on the relative, and I use that word for a reason, inexperience of the Nathaniel Hackett coaching staff, because let me remind everybody, and this isn't me trying to, harsh your buzz here. Nathaniel Hackett, first-time head coach. All right, cool. Justin Outen, first-time offensive coordinator. All right, cool. Ejiro Evero, first-time DC. Dwayne Stukes, first-time special teams coordinator. So that's a lot of first-time there, Zach. Is Russell Wilson enough to bridge that first-time trial and error that you got to expect from any first-time collection of coaches like that?
For Hackett and Outen, yeah, but I don't think, Russell Wilson can cover every wart on the team just by being Russell Wilson. I mean, he's not going to help out special teams if they have a disaster. So, yeah, it falls on the coaching staff, individually, their side of the ball, special teams, defense, and offense to get their players right and to be the real deal. George Payton put a ton of faith in these up-and-coming younger coaches, ascending coaches, and they have to prove that faith correct.
K-Hop says, who is the Broncos punt returner? Is it KJ Hamler or is it Montreal Washington, Zach?
KJ Montreal or Mike Boone as a wild card, but I think they're going to get the juice out of Montreal. And KJ, I don't think they pushed him, Chad, coming off that injury. I wouldn't run him out there for extra duty just yet, just to keep him healthy for offense. So I think Montreal or Mike Boone.
The man to beat is Montreal Washington, because just based on what the coaches have said since they drafted him, like, he was basically drafted to be their answer at returner, especially in the wake of letting Deontay Spencer hit the bricks. Obviously, Hackett and Dwayne Stukes weren't too stoked on him. They let him depart in free agency, and so they needed to solve that. KJ's health still up in the air. He's also a former second-round pick. How much do you want that guy returning punts? That's a pretty sketchy job description. So that's why Montreal Washington was drafted. So it's his job to lose, if we're being honest. The only thing I could see happening is he either is not equal to his opportunity, which doesn't sound like that's going to be the case. He seems like he's got good heart and a solid football IQ, or injury to Montreal. One of those two things. Otherwise, I think he's your returner.
And I want to dovetail to this question about Kyle because it's appropriate, what we're talking about right now. Kyle asked, do you expect our special teams to improve this year over last year? By how much? I mean, it's tough to not improve on Tom McMahon, considering how bad he really was on that side of the ball. I'm a big Dwayne Stukes guy, though, Chad. I don't know much about him before the Broncos hired him, but man, his attitude, his intensity, his the accountability that he projects, the responsibility, holding players accountable for every job, and chore they have on that side of the ball. I think they're going to be improved by that basis alone, but there's also question marks there too. McManus is the kicker. Is Sam Martin the punter? We just talked about punt returner. Who's the kick returner? I mean, long snapper, they're auditioning for that as well. There's a lot of questions Dwayne Stukes has to handle on his own, and being a first-time guy, how's he going to meet those demands?
I mean, Eric Trickle predicted Corliss Waitman to replace Sam Martin at punter. Broncos can save a couple million on the cap and that's why they brought Waitman. Is it Waitman or Watman?
It's Waitman.
Now, yeah, Waitman. But that's why they brought him in, was because, hey, let's give this guy a sniff to see if he could be better than our very average punter. Because if he turns out to be better than our very average punter, we can save some serious dollars on the salary cap. But yeah, Dwayne Stukes, it's going to be better. I'm telling you right now, dude, one thing that he has that none of the other coordinators have, at least at the NFL level, he's a former player and he's an intense cat, dude. You do not want to let that man down. You know, one of the things that kind of dominated what the Vic Fangio regime is going to be remembered for is its lack of accountability, both within the coaching staff and holding players accountable, not named Drew Lock. And that's not going to be a problem, Zach, for Dwayne Stukes. And that's good. Guys need to not only be held accountable by leadership, but when that's happening with consistency, what you find is it takes on a life of its own, and the dudes start holding each other accountable, and that's when you really got something special. Now, is this going to be the best special teams we've ever seen? I'm not going to go that far. Let's keep it in check, but I feel pretty confident saying Dwayne Stukes is going to improve this phase.
Yeah, it's a far cry from the Brock Olivo, Tom McMahon years. And the Broncos haven't had a great special teams coordinator since Joe DeCamillis, So I think Dwayne Stukes can get back on that level. And also the personnel on that side of the ball has improved. So another hat tip to George Payton for doing well to make the Broncos better.
Guys, thank you. Travis, thank you, Big Dog. Appreciate you being with us. Each and every one of you for making this a very lively chat. We moved through it very fast. We're going to get out of here a little bit early tonight, but I would guess we'll see how it shakes out tomorrow, Zach, on Monday. But this is the week where I think it's going to be hard getting off at the hour point like it normally is for us, because the chat's just on fire and there's so many storylines because football's back, baby. Thank the football gods.
Yeah, I don't mind. I love talking Broncos football, as do you, and time flies anyway, so I'd rather have more to talk about than less to talk about. Can't wait to get out of this desert. We are a few days away from getting that sweet, sweet H2O, baby.
Amen. If you wouldn't mind, you do our,
yes,
the drill, and I'll pull up our shout-outs for tonight.
Yes, sir. That was the Mile High Huddle podcast. Thank you all for tuning in with us. We're back on tomorrow night, same time, same place, 6 o'clock Mountain, 8 o'clock Eastern. Until that time, though, follow us on Twitter at Huddle Up Pod. You can follow the main account on Twitter at Mile High Huddle, Chad on Twitter at Chad and Jensen, myself at Kelberman NFL, our producer Scott at Scout Kennedy. And if you haven't, please go to huddleuppod.com and get yourself some merchandise. All new merch coming soon. Renovated site, up and running very crisply. Look at it if you can. Appreciate it, guys. And facebook.com/milehuddlepod. Like that page and follow that page. Guys, if you haven't by now, please go to Apple Podcasts and leave your football priest a 5-star review for a shot to win some merch each and every single month. But if anything, as you see ticking below you, do these 3 things. Subscribe, like, and share this video and every video you see on the MHH channel. It really helps us grow and reach more Broncos fans just like you.
Before the shout outs, I would be remiss to not make sure everybody knows how to listen to the Mile High Huddle show every day, the radio show. If you're not in Denver, let not your heart be troubled. You can stream our show, which is every weekday, 2 p.m. Mountain to 3 p.m., that 1 hour. It's 98.1 FM if you're in the Denver area. But if you're not, I'm going to put a link in the chat right here, guys, and I would suggest that you bookmark this. All right, I just put it in the chat. It's the live listen player for Mile High Sports Radio. All right, so go check that out and just bookmark it, knowing that we're going to be doing our thing. It's a radio version of your football priest, what we do, but within kind of a radio format. And Zach and I, in our first week, last week, we had a blast doing it. And so many people, Zach, the first 2 or 3 days were like, how do we listen if we're not in Denver? We're like, oh, let's figure this out. Finally, we got the information we needed. So You can listen online. It's really, really easy. So just bookmark the link I just put in the chat, and you won't have any problems whatsoever. Shout out to these great Super Chat superstars tonight supporting the Mile High Huddle podcast, starting with Gregory. Appreciate you, buddy. Michaela, Boise Man, Jeff, Jason, the Queen, and Mike. That rounds out the Super Chat superstars. And then our supporters on Facebook. Oh, it wants to be slow. Bear with me 1 second. It's pulling up. Facebook is just always a little bit slow. Shout out to these great supporters: Travis Weber, Howie Frickin' Day, Phil McLaughlin, Gary Leach Palmer, Lawrence Rivera. Much love and respect. We'll be shouting out and tagging those of you that we are connected with on Twitter after the show. So thank you. Love you.
See y'all tomorrow, guys. Take care. And as always, go Broncos.